Hey everyone, Judicial Watch President Tom Fitton here with our weekly update on social media. Well, the election took place this week. Big news with a big victory by President Trump. I'll provide you the latest news and analysis on that. How the steal was stopped, what should come next, what's happening in Arizona with that out of control, seemingly never-ending election count, and what Judicial Watch is preparing to do for the next administration. On top of that, we have a new lawsuit about Justice Department potential corruption that's worth exploring, because just because there's a new administration doesn't mean we don't want to know what happened in the last administration. So obviously the big news this week, and I'm still tired. I don't know, are you still tired? I stayed up late watching the election returns. President Trump is going to be the 47th president of the United States of America. It is a tremendous victory. There's been really nothing like it in American history in terms of what he had to overcome to gain his seat back or his office back. He faced large odds that no other president or candidate for presidency has ever faced, and he promoted or created a kind of a broad national coalition that could have potentially long-lasting solidity in our nation's political life, where he increased support among certain key demographics. And I'm not going to get into all of that with you, because that's what all the other networks have been doing for the last several days. But you generally know what I mean. It's just been it was an extraordinary feat. And here was President Trump on, I guess, not election night, but early the next day, in the middle of the night, around 2 or 3 in the morning. Here's a clip of what he had to say after his victory.
Many people have told me that God spared my life for a reason. And that reason was to save our country and to restore America to greatness. And now we are going to fulfill that mission together. We're going to fulfill that mission. The task before us will not be easy, but I will bring every ounce of energy, spirit, and fight that I have in my soul to the job that you've entrusted to me. This is a great job. There's no job like this. This is the most important job in the world. Just as I did in my first term, we had a great first term, a great first term. I will govern by a simple motto: promises made, promises kept. We're going to keep our promises. Nothing will stop me from keeping my word to you, the people. We will make America safe, strong, prosperous, powerful, and free again. And I'm asking every citizen all across our land to join me in this noble and righteous endeavor. That's what it is. It's time to put the divisions of the past 4 years behind us. It's time to unite. And we're going to try, we have to try, and it's going to happen. Success will bring us together. I've seen that.
Yeah, big deal. It's a big deal. It's President Trump, he won, right? It's his victory. Obviously, there are people, the voters put him in office, but it was a remarkable personal victory for him, and congratulations to him. And this was my initial reaction the other day, a quick one.
Remarkable victory by Donald Trump against a rigged system that saw his home raided, jammed prosecutions, the Biden-Harris Secret Service nearly getting him killed. Big victory for the rule of law. He needs to clean house.
Yeah, right? He needs to clean house. That should be job number 1 or 2 or 3, maybe job 1A, B, or C, right? Because there's so many priorities facing our country in terms of crises that I don't envy him having to get it all done, because he does have a relatively limited time once he's in office before the political calendar starts changing in a way that makes it difficult to get things done, even for a president. And our statement, our official Judicial Watch statement, kind of went through all the challenges he had to overcome in order to really achieve what I would say is the most remarkable political comeback in American history. And I think you'd have to kind of go through the annals of civilization to find, not American history, you have to kind of go through world history to find similar political comebacks. And there's really nothing comparable because there's been no civilization like Western civilization. There's been no nation with the power that the United States has. We should remember that President Trump, or the President of the United States, is the only candidate, obviously the Vice President as well, there's our two, that faces the electorate nationally. So that the only national candidate in this great nation we have. So it's really quite remarkable. And as I noted in our statement, we, of course, congratulate President Trump on his remarkable election as 47th President of the United States. The voters broadly and directly repudiated the lawfare targeting Trump, as well as the dangerous government abuses and contempt for the rule of law endemic here in Washington, D.C. President Trump had to overcome unprecedented abuse by corrupt and partisan prosecutors, politicians, and judges, all of whom tried to rig the election by smearing, raiding, investigating, prosecuting, trying, convicting, and gagging President Trump. In short, President Trump needs to clean house. The FBI and Justice Department are irredeemably compromised and corrupt, and the government abusers who targeted Trump and other innocent Americans should be subject to criminal investigation. And as sunlight is the best disinfectant, President Trump should open wide the deep state files on politicized deep state lies and corruption, especially its war on the rule of law, constitutional government, our First Amendment, and other civil rights. Judicial Watch, of course, and you know this, is ready, willing, and able to help and sue for government accountability as we continue our mission to uncover what the government is up to and to enforce the rule of law for election integrity, immigration, and of course against the crazed woke discrimination and racism. So the threats aren't going to stop, right? And this is why Judicial Watch's mission is as important as ever, during any presidential administration. And what I'm hoping is that President Trump focuses like a laser on opening up the records, getting the info out on the corruption of the prior several years. I'm talking about deep state corruption that goes back through Biden, through his administration, where they were targeting him from inside, and of course into the corrupt Obama administration. I used to joke, there's my tweet, defund and defang the deep state. And of course that's a big deal for what Congress has to do. But let's go to the map and see where we stand in terms of what the results are. So you can see he has a pretty broad victory here, and this is, I think, the Associated Press map, which is a bit more conservative than others who have already given him, I think, at least Arizona and Nevada, perhaps, which would bring him, I think, to 312 Electoral College votes, which is pretty extraordinary. And you can see the map itself is evidence of a kind of a broad-based support for him. In the Senate, it looks like Republicans, it's been confirmed that Republicans, let's go to the Senate map. So there are still a few Senate seats up for grabs in Nevada and Arizona, at least according to the Associated Press. But Republicans are set to get at least 53 seats. So they're going to have a pretty strong majority. And in the House, it's a bit more of a close call. My guess is which is educated, is that Republicans will retain control of the House. So if it happens as things seem to suggest, as the votes seem to suggest will happen, Republicans will control both the House, the Senate, and the presidency, which provides opportunities for tremendous reform, as I said, to defang and defund the deep state. And Kamala Harris, of course, was I don't want to do the obituaries on campaigns or spend too much time on it. But the coup was a failure, right? It was a failure. I mean, I'm increasingly convinced, and there's my tweet on it. I'm increasingly convinced, and this is just my putting on my political analyst hat, is that the Democrats realized that they were going to lose early in the year. And they saw with President Biden and his diminished capacities as kind of confirmed to everyone during that debate, and they all knew about it anyway behind the scenes, that things were going to be much worse election-wise. They were going to lose the presidency, likely, but they had an idea maybe they could keep the Senate. Certainly, they wanted to turn the House, and they didn't think that was going to be possible with President Biden. So they needed to get someone else in quickly. So hence, you had the coup. And Kamala Harris is placed in, and everyone knows what her deficiencies were. But I don't know if it mattered as much as the fact that there was this terrible inflation, extremism by the Biden administration, the lawfare, the efforts to kind of jail and target your political enemies. So to me, the writing was on the wall. And I think the Democrats largely knew the writing was on the wall. It doesn't mean they don't spend the money. It doesn't mean they don't try to win at the presidency. But I think they were just trying to mitigate the loss that was expected at the presidential level. And certainly the American people, in my view, and that analysis suggests, right, that you were all been lied to, that it was a race when it really wasn't a race. And as I highlighted, when they started calling Trump fascist and Hitler 2 weeks ago, I mean, that wasn't, quote, a new campaign strategy. That's what you do when you're losing. You engage in that kind of extremist name calling. So in some ways, the writing was on the wall. Now, on the other hand, in 2020, Biden was a terrible candidate, right? And they didn't know what to do. So they kept him quiet, and I would argue they manipulated the rules and engaged in shenanigans and unprecedented after election day counting that ruined the election. And they couldn't do it again this time around. And I think they couldn't do it again largely because, or in part because, of the work by Judicial Watch and frankly other citizen activists. The Republicans got their act together a bit more on election integrity measures, and that's how the steal was stopped. Because I'm convinced that one of the reasons they didn't call the election, I don't know if you were watching it on election night. I'm sure some of you went to bed before it was called, but it was called way late, especially given all the information out there that President Trump was the winner. And I'm convinced that they were kind of figuring out ways, how could they steal it? Could they manipulate the results or suggest they still had votes outstanding in a way that would allow them to take it away from the real winner? And I don't think that was possible because of the work that Judicial Watch did and the work others did. So yes, the steal was stopped, and I discussed that in this video here. Hey everyone, indeed the steal was stopped on election day. I think in no small part thanks to Judicial Watch's heavy lifting. In just the last year and a half or two, we've cleaned up 4 million dirty names from the rolls. We also got that huge Fifth Circuit ruling the other day that found counting ballots received after election day is unlawful. You can be sure that all helped ensure cleaner elections on election day. But there's more work to be done, so be sure to support Judicial Watch's election integrity work. So our work, I think, was instrumental in making the elections cleaner this year. I have no doubt about it. I mean, 4 million names, a warning shot from a major court that post-election day counting, even if it was limited to ballots only received after Election Day, the idea of counting ballots after Election Day received a significant blow thanks to Judicial Watch's work. And on top of that, you had the Republican National Committee following our lead on a lot of these election integrity issues. And they were actually willing and able to go to court on issues big and small to let the left know that anything inappropriate, illegal, or fraudulent, or in violation of common sense in the law would be challenged. I mean, you saw up in Bucks County, Pennsylvania, where the bureaucrats tried to tell voters who were in line they couldn't vote. There were some shenanigans down in Georgia as well, and Republicans were all over that issue. Does it mean the elections were pure? Of course not. I mean, well, I'll get into that with Arizona. But this is how we save our country, by ensuring fair and clean elections and taking key steps to do it. And as a result, and I went through previously with you, you may recall, the various scenarios that either Kamala Harris wins outright on election night. There's no discussion of any additional vote counting in terms of having an impact. The decisions made on election night, that clearly she won. Or President Trump clearly wins on election night, which is actually what happened. And the good news is, and because the concern I had was that if he was winning on election night and he wasn't certified the winner, more or less, that this election would be taken from him again as it was in 2020. And the good news is, and it's not because of I'm not saying this because I share some policy goals and I'm happy Trump won. It's because I'm happy for the country. Because I believe the left was prepared to engage in violence if it was close in order to pressure Democrats to somehow deny him and to provide cover for them to steal the election. And because his vote was overwhelming, he avoided that outcome, and Americans avoided that outcome. I mean, here's the popular vote numbers, which is an interesting issue in light of the issue of, I was talking about removing 4 million dirty names from the rolls. Let's put up that popular vote chart. The popular vote chart with the bar graphs. Nope. Nope. Remember the bar graphs going across the paper from prior elections? It's a different document. It's not there. We don't have it. Okay, well, you showed it to me earlier. Okay, well, anyway, the Democrats got, 15 million less votes than last year. I think that's the current number. I don't know what it is. Trump won the popular vote, and Democrats got 15 million votes less than Biden did last year, Kamala Harris did. And the question is, where did those votes disappear to? And I don't know the answer. Is there a legitimate answer? Yeah, this is the number. Look at the difference in the blue bar there between 2020 and 2024. Trump got about 3 million fewer votes than he received last year. And look at that bar graph going across from 2012 to 2016 to 2024. You see the consistencies there? And then you got that big jump in 2020. What happened? Did those votes disappear? Were they phantom votes? I think that's an area ripe for investigation and discussion. Now, there may be legitimate reasons for it. It may have been that 2020 was a because of the massive mail-in balloting, you had people both legal and I would suggest maybe ineligible voting in ways that never would ever be matched again. But why were they only voting for Biden? It doesn't make sense. Because I think, Trump got a record number of votes for a Republican at the time. I mean, his vote numbers, I think, would have been higher in terms of the popular vote. So it's a mystery. But the other question is, what should Trump do? And as he noted at the end of his remarks, or the remarks we showed, he's got a clean house. I mean, we've got these agencies that have been rogue, that can't be trusted to give him the time of day. I mean, I'm even concerned about the transition. Do you remember the transition from last time? When he was coming in, they used the transition to spy on him at the highest levels. So, we have to have an orderly transition of government. Don't you believe it? They never believed in it. They used the orderly transition of government to engage in sedition and spying on the incoming president and efforts to destroy him and undermine him from within. So I tell you, if I were Trump or his team, I wouldn't meet with any of them. I exaggerate for effect, but you know what I mean. I'd keep the FBI away. I'd call them and say, you know what? You guys just leave the office and leave the keys on the desk and we'll come in and figure out what to do. I wouldn't trust them as far as I could throw them. And who was behind a lot of that smear operation, that sedition operation? It wasn't just Obama, it was Joe too, because he had a lot riding on it because of all the corruption he had to undermine people who knew all about him, like Mike Flynn and others. So there's still grave risk for President Trump from the deep state, and it's going to take a while for him, assuming he's as aggressive as he's promised, to even get a hold of it. And in the meantime, he will remain in danger from sedition, spying, and such. I mean, for all we know, he's under criminal investigation again by this gang. Don't believe they're going away. And of course, and to be fair to the Democratic Party and people who didn't support Trump, I mean, if you lost the election, you'd be upset, but you wouldn't say, well, I'm going to give up now, right? You would just reorganize and see what you could do to advance your policy agenda and maybe slow down or stop the policies you disagree with. And that's perfectly right in a republic. But what's wrong is engaging in behavior that suggests your opponents, and language that suggests your opponents are illegitimate and should be, quote, overthrown through coup-like activity. Use language that the left always uses to direct violence at their opponents. I mean, look at what these governors have been saying. Here's the governor. Let's go to the governor from Massachusetts. Let's hear what she has to say about her plans to basically attack democracy, right?
If the Trump administration requests it, would the Massachusetts State Police assist in mass deportations?
No, absolutely not. But
well, that sounds like sedition to me. What are they going to do? Help illegal aliens here in violation of law evade lawful federal authorities trying to enforce federal law? Here's Governor Pritzker, the governor of one of the most corrupt states in the country, Illinois, Democrat governor. Let's hear what he had to say.
Here we are.
Here's the governor of Illinois essentially promising
majority of women are not the
to
only
protect illegal aliens from
disappointed
being
in the results of
deported
the election on Tuesday.
as federal law requires.
For many Illinoisans,
Isn't it
there's a
crime to aid
considerable
and
amount
abet
of
illegal
uncertainty
immigration?
and
Or
unease
full synonym?
about the road ahead. And I'm here today to remind people that no matter the storm that we face, Illinois will always strive to make you welcome and safe and protected. While I was certainly surprised by Tuesday's results, I was not unprepared. Having fought through the headwinds of the first Trump administration, the General Assembly and I took proactive steps to plan for the potential of a second Trump presidency and protect our residents from the damage that it may attempt to cause. Illinois will continue to be a refuge for those whose rights are being denied elsewhere, women seeking reproductive health care, immigrants searching to work hard for a better life, LGBTQ Americans looking for
Sounds like
welcome
insurrection to
and
me,
protection,
right?
and people with disabilities whose civil and human rights are under attack.
I mean, it sounds like someone wants to set up their own little country in these states. I mean, no one is suggesting anyone do anything other than follow the law on any of those issues. And there's a process to even enforce the rule of law. And they have zero interest in acceding to the lawful directives and interpretation and application of the law by the federal government. Because I don't hear like, well, we will comply with the law, and if there are violations potentially, we will exercise our rights. I hear insurrection language, right? Insurrection language. And of course, AOC, who, you know, I know many people criticize her, I think she should be taken seriously because she's a leader of this so-called resistance. Even using the word resistance, by the way, suggests that you don't use the word resistance in a democratic republic or a constitutional republic. It's typically the loyal opposition, right? Or the opposition party or the minority party. Resistance suggests that the owner, the rulers or those in power are illegitimate. And this clip from AOC, she goes full communist. Listen.
Our main project is to unite the working class in this country against a fascist agenda, period. We have had an enormous setback in this election because the fascist won a lot of working class support, which has happened before in history. And we can talk about that. This is going to be a very scary time. And again, I cannot emphasize how important it is that we, as an aligned people, be very cautious about attacking one another.
Yeah, I mean, that's just pure communism she's talking there. Organizing working people against a fascist state. I mean, that's like 1950s style Soviet propaganda from a senior, she's a senior person in the House and a leader in the House. And you see the governors joining her in less extreme language, right? Gavin Newsom is announcing, you know, his opposition to the Trump administration, even before Trump administration comes in. Same in New York. And you see that language calling him a fascist, which is, again, language that the left uses to direct violence at specific people and their opponents. If someone's a fascist, that means they don't deserve the protection of the rule of law. So it's extremely dangerous. One, as I noted, they denied Trump Secret Service protection, adequate Secret Service protection during the campaign and nearly got him killed. And it was for politics and it certainly constrained his campaign. That's one way to rig an election. He overcame that rigging of his campaign or rigging of the election. I mean, the news is breaking as I go and talk to you right now that the Biden administration finally, 2 days after election, was it 2 or 3 days after the election, they announced, oh, well, there's this big Iranian plot to try to kill Trump. And even though they knew that plot was afoot, they still denied him full and adequate protection. So I tell you, when Joe Biden says that Trump should come by the White House and they're, you know how I might react to that. And I don't blame Trump for going there. There are reasons beyond, beyond maybe my personal pique at seeing this gang almost get him killed and putting him in jail illegally. So that's why, I said in terms of what happens next, transparency, accountability, integrity. FBI and DOJ, they can't survive in their current form. Maybe not at all, certainly with respect to the FBI. Because if they still do at the end of Trump's term, it's going to happen all over again. If Trump will obviously still be targeted and retargeted, and any other rising Republican will be too, or conservative. I mean, and I know what they're capable of doing because they did it to me in part. They did it to your Judicial Watch. I mean, some of you may not know this, but it was in 2022. The Biden gang, the Biden FBI, they came knocking at my door. I had literally just gotten home from surgery for skin cancer. I'm lying on the couch. Knock, knock, knock on the door. Knock, knock, knock on the door. 6:30. It was at night. It was 2 FBI agents giving me a subpoena. And later I was hauled in before the grand jury. Judicial Watch had to deal with this document subpoena. I had to deal with a document subpoena, and they harassed me for 4 hours over our advocacy for you, the American people, on election integrity, on the rule of law, and against Justice Department abuse. It was pure retaliation. And I'm just a witness. They want to put Trump in jail. And they still do. I mean, and to show you the political game around these prosecutions, there's announcements and leaks this week. Oh, well, there's a policy that we can't prosecute sitting presidents, so we're just going to shut all those cases down that Jack Smith's been running. Well, if they were so important, why would you shut them down? And here's a statement that Smith filed on the court docket the other day in the case that is still like real active, which is the January 6th case against Trump. As a result of the election held on November 5th, the defendant is expected to be certified as president-elect on January 6th and inaugurated on January 20th, 2025. The government respectfully requests that the court vacate the remaining deadlines in the pretrial schedule to afford the government time to assess this unprecedented circumstance and determine the appropriate outcome going forward. Consistent with Justice Department policy, which is to not target presidents. Of course, the policy should be not to target former presidents, but they changed those rules for Trump. Now, what's going to happen in New York is Judge Merchan, he's got a hearing or a decision to make about whether the immunity knocks out his sham case against Trump over non-crimes in New York, the so-called 34 felony convictions, which are about as legitimate. I don't know. I'm so mad I can't even close that metaphoric loop. Do you think Judge Merchan's going to not try to imprison Trump? I would say it's 50-50. And there's going to have to be incredible, swift action taken by Trump's legal team to stop that abuse from going forward. I don't know what's going to go on in Georgia. Looks like the courts may shut all that down because of misconduct by the prosecutor. Is Jack Smith going to hold all of this in abeyance? Toll the statute of limitations? What are they going to do? Are they going to target the others around him? Scare everyone else from working for the Trump administration by pretending they have the ability to prosecute them while keeping him away, even though he's integral to the case? Trump should not only fire Jack Smith, he should look into anyone else who abused their authority, hold them accountable, and let's be clear, there must be a criminal investigation of the Justice Department's abuse of Trump and other innocents immediately. I mean, I posted something on Twitter the other day where I retweeted at my speech, one of my speeches I gave, talking about the FBI harassing me and my family. I want justice. And I'm sure Trump wants justice too, and I hope he gets it. And these agencies need to be held accountable. And if they're not, the abuses will continue as surely as night follows day. the steal, and I was talking, the steal was stopped at the presidential level. Again, no doubt it would have been stolen if they thought they could do it. But because we were watching, they couldn't. But there are other races where the steal may be going on. Well, where the whole process has been corrupted that you can't even trust the outcome, whatever it may be. And in Arizona, they still haven't finished counting the ballots. And that's one of the reasons the Associated Press hasn't awarded Arizona to Trump yet, or Nevada, because Nevada's slow too, inexcusably slow. In Arizona, I did a quick video on what the status was. I think it was just less than 24 hours ago. Let's go to that video.
Hi everyone, what's going on in Arizona, specifically Maricopa County, is brazen election corruption. I mean, I'm going to draw up the latest numbers here. Let's go take a look at them on our screen here at Judicial Watch. We've been monitoring the election very closely. Maricopa County, the biggest county in Arizona. It's where Phoenix is. They have early ballots they haven't counted yet now. As of right now, 438,000. The total uncounted number of ballots is 584,000. It's Thursday. Election was on Tuesday. Pima County, another big county in Arizona. It's where Tucson is. Let's see what that number is. 75,000 early ballots left the process. So these are ballots that people have voted on a long time ago. 175,000 uncounted ballots in Pima County. Arizona total, 945,000 ballots, more or less. Now, I tell you, counting ballots after the election invites voter fraud. It encourages voters to think the system is rigged. It undermines voter confidence. Plus, I would argue it's illegal. Federal law sets an election day, not an election week. And counting ballots forever and a day after an election is, to me, just a violation not only the letter of the law, in my view, but certainly the spirit.
Let's go to what the status is of those votes down, Maricopa and Pima. Pima, I should say. Not much better. It's been a full 24 hours, still 400. I'm having trouble seeing it for this distance. Was that 455,000 ballots still outstanding in Maricopa? That's Phoenix, of course. Yep. And how many ballots in Pima? I can't even see that. I'm going to fail that test. 25,000? 35?
106.
Oh, 106. I'm looking at the one under it. So 106 still. For a total of 725,000, more or less, ballots still outstanding 3 days after the election. Inexcusable. It's election corruption, no matter how you slice it. Now, it may be Carrie Lake, she's not senator yet, wins. It may be her opponent wins. But the whole process has been compromised, and it's, again, ruined another election. This is why we've got to get back to Election Day, not just voting on Election Day, but showing up in person, obviously, to vote. None of this mail-in balloting, more or less. Voter ID, citizenship verification. And I tell you, Congress should get on the ball on that. That should be a priority. We need election integrity. States that count forever and a day after Election Day undermine election integrity. I mean, look at the House. Let's go back to that status report on the House. Where do we stand on the House? 211. So it's 3 days after the election. House camp. How many people are in a House? I'm going to say a number that's probably 20 years old. I forget how many residents are in a House district. Is it six? I have it in my head at 645, but it's probably much bigger than that now. The point is, it's not a lot of people in terms of counting ballots. And we still don't know who won. California, they count ballots that arrive for up to 7 days after Election Day. So they're still coming in. Illinois, 14 days. Here in Washington, D.C., 7 days. We got to stop that. And Judicial Watch took a major step in stopping it with that Fifth Circuit ruling the other day, finding it to be unlawful. And we got to push that among all the other states that are doing it. And I don't care what Congress says, Judicial Watch is going to continue its heavy lifting for cleaner elections. You know, the Justice Department hasn't been doing anything, certainly not under the Biden administration, to clean up the election rolls. It's Judicial Watch that cleaned those 4 million names up in the last year or two from the voting rolls across the country. It's Judicial Watch alone that's in court trying to clean up the rolls in Oregon, Illinois, and in California. Millions of names potentially at issue there. Justice Department's been AWOL. And even if when Trump takes over the administration, the Justice Department's going to take some time even to get into it, even if they want to. So that's why it's important to have independent groups like Judicial Watch doing this work. I mean, if we don't have elections you can trust, you lose the republic, right? You lose your self-government or the ability to govern yourselves. So this is why Arizona is very concerning. I mean, in the Senate, the difference between 54 or 55 votes and 53 is a big deal. Every vote counts in the Senate. It's, smaller number, it's obvious. And in the House, who knows? I mean, the Republicans will probably just eke out a majority in the House in the end. So this is why election integrity not only matters at the presidential level, but down ballot. And it's kind of easier to get away with fraud down ballot because there are fewer people interested. And so this is why our work on election security is so important. Is there anything else I'm forgetting about the election in terms of what we talked about, guys? Oh, yeah. So what's been the left response to the election? Well, first of all, before I get to that, I want to show you this one video because this kind of showed you the leftist approach to dealing with their political opposition. And it was kind of an unusual video in that it has almost 1 million views on Judicial Watch's YouTube channel. And I'm just commenting on let's just play the video.
What do we have here? Oh boy. So this leftist, or what seems to be a leftist, is trying to take down, comically unsuccessfully, this Trump Vance sign. I'm not sure why he's unable to do it. I'd like to think I could take it down with one hand. Is this the left's new masculinity? I don't know. But it occurs to me, I see lots of signs I don't like in the District of Columbia, political signs. It doesn't occur to me to take any of them down, even the ones that might be there in a place they're not supposed to be under the law. But this is the left's approach towards free speech.
But isn't that an encapsulation of the left's approach to free speech? And that was obviously pre-election. Now, I don't know if I could take it down with one hand. I think maybe two hands I could have taken it down with. And this is what I've been saying here and elsewhere. You can't slow down a bit, even with an election whose results you might agree with and like. Because the issues that concern you, such as destruction of our borders, such as the destruction of our First Amendment freedoms and all the other plans and schemes they have up, or they've had up their sleeve for some time now, it ain't going to go away. Like, for instance, their reaction, the extremist left's reaction to speech they don't like, as expressed at the ballot box, is to destroy speech and suppress it and censor it. And here's a video talking about that.
I think in a normal country, we would say, hold on a second, maybe we need to have a different set of regulations for social media platforms now they're this big.
It would help if we could regulate social media, because one of the biggest offenders is D.C. and Congress have not been able to do one thing in regard to the rogue corporations of social media.
And then moves them through YouTube videos, through podcasts, moves them from that annoyance all the way slowly to a full-blown fascist politic. We don't have the equivalent of Joe Rogan and Jordan Peterson to move that man in a feminist direction.
Go fuck yourself.
I don't know what that last one was. Well, Elon Musk was, well, you know, I do remember what the context of that rather blunt statement by Musk was. He was responding to advertisers threatening to pull their advertising from their platform in order to get him to censor speech. And there was this boycott organized by the radical left to destroy Twitter, literally destroy Twitter, for promoting freer speech. And that was his response. If they were going to try to threaten him and extort him, that was his response. And it's the correct response. And of course, he has the sort of, you know, go bleep yourself money that makes him, basically difficult to corrupt and to corral. But the left isn't going to stop trying to suppress free speech. They don't believe in it. They want to regulate it. Our speech at Judicial Watch has been censored by big tech. As I noted last week, the Washington Post and New York Times and the whole media censorship government complex has been targeting us for censorship. We've been literally censored at the behest of government officials. And I tell you, when Trump comes in, he should expose all of that, because a lot of that was out of the Biden White House. A lot of that was out of the Biden White House. You know, and their gamesmanship continues. I mean, they're talking about pressuring, for instance, and you're not even on free speech. We talked about the attack on the Supreme Court by packing the Supreme Court. These leftists are kind of basically increasing public pressure on a Latino woman, Justice Sotomayor, to retire before she's ready to retire, so they can rush a newer, younger Supreme Court justice onto the court. It's kind of outrageous when you think about it, right? But it is politics, so. But that's their game. I mean, you think there's a principled concern they have about someone's value as a person? No, no, no. We saw that with Joe. I mean, did you see Joe Biden, President Biden, give his speech after the election at the White House? He was the happiest I've ever seen him. It almost looked like the lights were on. Because, you know, he's done. The coup is over. And the coosters, the coup cabal, lost. So he must be facing, you know, he's probably a little bit upset about Trump winning. But I tell you, if I were a Democrat, and my advice as president of Judicial Watch to Democratic Party officials is get the corruption out of the party. Get those who keep on telling you to abuse the rule of law, tell them to get lost or put them in jail. I mean, I want a two-party system in the country. Obviously, I have particular values I want expressed, and I'm not going to get into my personal political preferences in terms of party. I don't want a party that's kind of gone off the rails, right? We want the rule of law, and a party or a group or a movement that supports lawlessness and the destruction of our country, we've got to figure out a way to excise from the body politic by punishing those who break the rules and educating Americans why that is unacceptable. So maybe Trump can do some of that, and I hope that the Democrats kind of look at themselves and say, we have to really get rid of this lawfare. We've got to stop the focus on trying to jail our opponents and censor them, and just start engaging in normal politics. Now, some of you may say, well, that's never going to happen. Well, we still have to advocate for the right thing, right? I mean, I could, now on Republicans, this might be even more naive for me to say. We need all the Republicans in Congress to get on board with an anti-corruption agenda, a transparency agenda, a defund the deep state agenda. A protect the borders agenda, you name it. Are they all going to be on board? What if Trump wants to shut down the FBI? Are they going to be on board for that? Many won't. So you Democrats, clean house. You Republicans, clean house. Take the mote out. What's the line? Take the mote out of your own eye. It's politics. You're going to call attention to the splinter in the other guy's eye too. And this is what I love about Judicial Watch. I tell it as I see it. Now, politically, what's going to happen next? Again, we're going to have funding fights just within minutes, practically speaking. Are they going to fully fund the deep state for another year, or just for enough to get them through a few weeks of government? That's going to be the debate, and you can imagine where the establishment class is going to be. Republicans are going to be Republicans in the Senate. They're going to be running the Senate because they're the majority, and Leader McConnell is stepping down as leader, so they have to replace him. And there are three candidates: Senator Cornyn, the Republican from Texas, Senator Thune, and Senator Rick Scott. Conservatives are coalescing around Rick Scott. But whoever the leader is it going to be a reformist leader, or is it just going to be this is the way things are and they can never change leader? Which is what, Mitch McConnell had his positives, but he certainly had a lot of negatives in the sense of really not being terribly concerned about the rule of law issues and the corruption that I think should have agitated him more directly. So those are the challenges. And of course, Judicial Watch we're just going to keep on keeping on. I mean, we know what to do. We will work with the Trump administration or anyone in Congress that wants to do the right thing. If we're not getting answers from the agencies, we will sue in court. I mean, people always say, Tom Fitton's a Trump ally. I'm friends with Trump. Yeah, I admit. Trump knows who Judicial Watch is. I have this fun video detailing the show that Trump knows who we are. Let's run that.
We have Tom Fitton. We have so many people. Tom Fitton. Where's Tom Fitton? Stand up, Tom Fitton. Stand up, Steve Bannon. Where's Steve Bannon? Where's Steve? Where is Steve? Stand up, Bannon. Where the hell is Bannon?
I don't think Bannon was there. Yeah.
Oh, he still looks good? Tom always looks good. I don't know. I think he does that weightlifting stuff, Tom, right? But Bannon looks good. We'll have a...
So I know Trump a little bit, and so I'm happy for him personally. So it makes it tough when we have to sue the Trump administration, right? We've sued the Trump administration previously. But that's what we do at Judicial Watch. I mean, there are lots of politicians I know here in Washington. I know more than, I've been here so long, and given my leadership role at Judicial Watch, you can't help but become cordial or know them professionally. But it doesn't stop us from doing the right thing. So if a Trump agency doesn't give us the documents, we're just going to sue. And hopefully President Trump will agree that it's outrageous they don't give us the documents, but we'll see. So we're prepared to keep on trying to get records about the corruption. And listen, we've got to open up the records of the Biden administration. There's still records from the abuses of Trump from the days of Mueller and Obama and such that they're still hiding from us, believe it or not. And I'm hoping Trump focuses on that as well, because this warfare, this lawfare against him wasn't just during the Biden years. It goes back through the Obama years, through his years where his Justice Department was a rogue agency targeting him. So if you like cleaner elections, you got them, thanks to Judicial Watch. If you like transparency, you've gotten it, thanks to Judicial Watch. If you want more of both, you'll get them by supporting Judicial Watch. And to that end, I encourage you to get my new book, Rights and Freedoms in Peril. It's a great Judicial Watch book. It's an investigative report on the left's attack on America. It's a great way to understand what's at issue for the new Trump administration. It's available widely on Amazon, Barnes & Noble. It's everyone who's read it thinks it's a great book, and they're not just telling me that. You can go to Amazon, look at all the reviews. It's engaging and educational at the same time, right? So, you know, it's not one of these books where you say, well, oh boy, I can't follow it. You're not going to believe some of the material in here, and you're going to wonder, and you're going to want to see it so you know, what is it you want Trump to do? What is it you want Congress to do to save our rights and freedoms? Available in bookstores everywhere. Rights and Freedoms in Peril. And there's got to be a reckoning, right? There's got to be consequences for what went on. And we kind of do it in every way we can. And there's this interesting lawsuit we just filed. There are two things that are kind of interest to me here. The biggest one issue is whether the Justice Department can be trusted to prosecute anything political. And there was a case they had brought, a prosecution they had brought against a man in New Hampshire who had used an AI device of some type to create a facsimile of Joe Biden's voice and then provided evidently false information as alleged to voters. And so the government, the Biden Justice Department, prosecuted him. In February, an election consultant, Steve Kramer, commissioned a fake robocall using artificial intelligence to impersonate Joe Biden's voice to urge New Hampshire voters not to participate in the state's January 23rd primary. New Hampshire's Attorney General charged Kramer with 13 felony counts of voter suppression and 13 misdemeanor counts of impersonation of a candidate. Subsequently, the League of Women Voters filed a lawsuit against Kramer and other firms involved in the call. So what we want to know is what the Justice Department's role in all of this was. You know, and were they working with this third-party group to push this prosecution? And this is why we asked for records of the Office of Legal Counsel, including emails, text messages, voicemail messages, video conferencing, briefings, or other forms of record regarding the Voting Rights Act, the robocalls, and the company that were being prosecuted up in New Hampshire. Now, the easiest thing for them to have said to Judicial Watch, to have handled this, would have been, the easiest way for them to have handled this was to say to Judicial Watch, we don't have anything. This is a New Hampshire case. Instead, we're getting the runaround. And the League of Women's Voters is, despite their reputation because of their name, a radical left-wing activist group. So their involvement suggests that this whole thing is political. And, you know, the outrage of the AI use of Biden's voice, I think, is interesting because, not that I think it's appropriate, if indeed these charges are true. I'm not even sure, you know, I'm not pretending to know whether the charges are appropriate or not under the law of New Hampshire. But I'm suspicious of selective prosecution in New Hampshire or with the assistance of the Justice Department, because I don't trust any of them. And was this a favor to the Biden administration or the Biden campaign? I don't know. This is why we're asking the questions and we can't get answers. But the left is, speaking of censorship, the left is obsessed with controlling AI outputs. Not because they're concerned that AI will lead to like a destruction of civilization. It's because they are concerned that AI will worsen what they believe to be misinformation and disinformation. They want to censor AI outputs to be in compliance with their worldview. So when they talk about AI regulation, they're talking about manipulating information that you would gain from AI to benefit the left and their political allies. So that's the way to think about AI regulation whenever you hear it. There's AI regulation that would, you know, in theory have some public safety component. As a conservative, I'm skeptical of government regulation being able to figure out how to regulate anything. Government regulators being able to figure out how to regulate anything. But when the left talks about AI regulation, let me put it this way. You know who was put in charge of AI regulation in the Biden White House? Barack Obama. I mean, do I have to say anything else to you? So this story has a twofer aspect of it. We want to know if they were doing a favor for the Biden gang, who they were working with in prosecuting this guy for these alleged phone calls. And secondly, it's an indication that they are very concerned about AI being used successfully to empower Americans to understand the political process more with, quote, unapproved information. So it's Big Brother in reverse, right? Well, we are celebrating one of my favorite holidays. Even though I'm not a veteran, it's one of my favorite holidays because it's so patriotic. It's Veterans Day, November 11th. So I wish all of you veterans happy Veterans Day. And Judicial Watch is blessed to have many, many veterans on our staff. I mean, their backgrounds are just phenomenal. All very interesting. And, you know, I'm not a veteran. I joke the most dangerous thing I do is get into a cab. And so I really am grateful, and I know I speak for all patriots in expressing gratitude. And one of my favorite speeches I've read here, but I like going back to it, is a speech that Ronald Reagan gave on Veterans Day back in 1985, which is what now, 30 years ago? Almost 30 years ago. And this speech, you know, well done political speeches always speak across the ages, right? And so you go through the speech, and maybe we'll provide a link below to you. But there's sections of the speech I think are particularly noteworthy for us at all times. And he talks about our responsibilities to veterans and the fighting men and women and those fighting in war. And this excerpt says, "The living have a responsibility to remember the conditions that led to the wars in which our heroes died. Perhaps we can start by remembering this, that all those who died for us and our country were, in one way or another, victims of a peace process that failed, victims of a decision to forget certain things, to forget, for instance, that the surest way to keep a peace going is to stay strong. Weakness, after all, is a temptation. It tempts the pugnacious to assert themselves, but strength is a declaration that cannot be misunderstood. Strength is a condition that declares actions have consequences. Strength is a prudent warning to the belligerent that aggression need not go unanswered. So as we transition to a new administration, and I know the debate between Trump policies and the current establishment, transnational establishment policies, this is a core issue, right? Very conservative Reagan-esque approach. And I hope we get more of this approach in all of our foreign policy, not even with the new Trump administration. But as we discuss public policy and we talk about all these cultural issues and not only its impact on our lives domestically, but foreign policy-wise, Reagan again has a wonderful description at the issue and the prayer that we should all ask. God, the prayer and the grace we should all ask from God. He notes we endanger the peace, and I would argue that's a domestic and a foreign affairs issue, and confuse all issues when we obscure the truth, when we refuse to name an act for what it is, when we refuse to see the obvious and seek safety in Almighty. Peace is only maintained and won by those who have clear eyes and brave minds. Now, I'd like to think at Judicial Watch we have clear eyes and brave minds. And I think that's what we should pray for among our elected political leadership and our fellow citizens. It's the bravery to confront the problems, clarity in understanding what they are, with, of course, God at our side as we face what often can be insurmountable hurdles. So with that, I pray for the safety of our veterans currently in service, the continued health of those out of service, and I honor those who've passed away, who've given not only service, but their very lives for the protection of our country. So God bless them, God bless you, and God bless America. And I will see you here next time on the Judicial Watch Weekly Update. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and like our video down below.